It's all fun and games until someone loses a finger.
Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers from 3 countries, 2 continents, and featuring 5 guys separated only by the same language. Here's your host, Richard Morley.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good times, whatever time it is, and wherever it is you are listening. Joined on the show with me tonight, there is Mr. Chris Cute.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
And Mr. Joe Whittaker.
You're right, Tom, yeah.
The face of Alan Robinson.
How are you, fellas?
And he spent the last week down the back of the sofa with all the loose change, old pizza boxes and tele remotes, looking for our Twitter account password. It's Jamie Page.
How you doing?
Are we all good to go on Twitter now, Jamie?
Yes, we're all up and running.
Thank goodness. Well, at least if we can't get into the account, hopefully nobody else can as well. So I guess there is some good came out of that.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way. So this week's shout outs and thank yous over on Facebook. We've got Doc Gerard Hilderant. I hope I pronounced that right. Justin Levine. That was quite an interesting picture that Justin posted, if I remember rightly. Over on YouTube, Ian Brody Smith, Shogun Jimmy, Sharp Edge Woodworking, Temple Boy Turnings, Bruce Chastain, KSFWG, Woodsley Summercraft, Ian Hay, Jim Dockrell, Rob's Woodshop, and then over on SoundCloud, as always, Jason McGinn. So thanks to everyone who's getting in touch, commenting, messaging, generally sharing, tweeting, Instagramming, whatever, and all the rest of it. It really does help us out, and it is so cool when we get to interact with you guys on a kind of a more one-to-one basis, which is pretty cool. I think everyone will agree with that. Just to kind of mix things up a wee bit before we head into the main topic tonight, we have a random listener question from the past week, and this will be a surprise for the other 4 because we haven't actually talked about this before the show. But the question is, what's the dumbest thing you've ever done in the shop? Any takers on that?
Oh boy. That that lends itself to a lot of different types of interpretations, but the dumbest thing I can honestly say I've ever done in the shop is when I ran my thumb through my table saw. I almost cut my thumb off on a table saw. That was pretty dumb.
Yeah, I think that qualifies as hopefully the dumbest thing you've ever done.
Exactly. Well, so far that is. I've done some ludicrous things, where I've been just a complete ass of myself, but that was the dumbest thing I've ever done, yeah.
I've made a complete ass of myself just walking into the shop. But the stupidest thing I've ever done whilst in there, I think, is not realising I've left the chuck key in the lathe and then turning the lathe on. And it's whacked me straight in the face, but luckily I had a face shield on. So it still hurt, don't get me wrong. But yeah, that's probably the stupidest thing I've ever done.
That's pretty stupid, Jamie. Yeah, I mean, that's all about sort of being in the moment and thinking about. I was kind of hoping somebody would come up with an amusing thing that wasn't potentially life-threatening, but I'm not sure if anyone has got some. I've got one if no one else has, but if someone else has, I'll save it for another day.
Well, I've got another one. I'll tell you guys, this is kind of a surprise, and the only person I believe who knows this, and God, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this podcast because I'm going to be in a lot of trouble if she does. Do you remember the Halloween video I did?
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay. I was in the middle of shooting that actually, and Jay Rivera came to my shop, and we were standing around, and I had my 30-30. Remember, I had that rifle in the in the video.
That's right.
And the rifle was loaded.
I did say a safety thing. I really did that.
Yes, it was the same. I picked the rifle up, and the rifle went off. And I shot a hole through the ceiling of my shop. The bullet went through my second-story floorboard into my bathroom, through the door in the bathroom, and got lodged in the joist in my attic. That's rather, it could have been very dangerous, but that is rather funny if you stop and think about it. And oh boy, was that loud. Both Jay's and my ears were ringing for like a good half an hour after that it went off because we were in my shop, and the echo was just, oh my God. Anyway, so hopefully that's a little humorous. Kind of, sort of.
I can see people from the UK who have absolutely no sort of practical understanding. And I'm looking at Jamie and Joe's faces actually in the little thumbnails. I mean, because obviously there's a vastly different culture around firearms and guns between the US and the UK, and I kind of get the American thing about having guns in the house, and obviously not having them in the house in the UK and all the rest of it. But I come from a slightly military background, so I've got an understanding of guns and all that sort of stuff. And I can see the funny side of that, because nothing sort of bad happened.
Nothing happened. Yeah, that's why it was funny. Otherwise, it wouldn't be funny.
I'm trying to picture. Have you seen that Simpsons episode? I think it was a Halloween episode actually, or they're all like set up a vigilante group.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
There's like an episode of The Simpsons where all the sort of the main characters are in the house, and Margie's going, no, we don't need a vigilante group, and Homer's set like the lead vigilante, and they've all got guns in the living room, and every 5 seconds it's going, no, we're perfectly safe, and some of the gun goes off, and no, honestly, we don't need a goes off, and it's just round. That's the picture I've got in my head. I'm trying to see the funny side.
I've done something pretty stupid myself. A few months back, I made some headphone holders, and I made them out of zebra wood. Now, zebra wood is pretty tough, and especially the end grain. Well, I'd made an MDF template, and I'd got 1.5 inch flush trim bit in my router table, and the bearing was at the bottom, so it had to be fully raised up through the table. And I'd got the holding it with the end grain going to be routed into it, and it just ripped it straight out of my hands, went straight across the room, hit into the wall. But when I watched my video back, my hand was that close to being pulled into that router bit. It was like, I cannot include this in the video, so it's like, no, that went in the bin. But yeah, that's the stupidest thing I've ever done.
Ouch. I think the actual stupidest thing I've ever done is not properly tighten a cutter in the collet of a router. And I think I've talked about that before on the podcast. But probably the funniest, dumbest thing I've ever done. Have you ever worked with stain and you think, I'll just put the gloves on because I always get stain everywhere. It always goes everywhere. But then you go, I've just got a little bit to it. It's like a tiny little corner that you've missed or something. And I won't bother going and getting the gloves. And you get to put the stain on, and then you knock the can over.
Oh man,
the stains, and it was like, just there must have been like 1,000 cats all queued up at the side, waiting to walk, paw prints everywhere. But they didn't need I've got it all over my hands, all over the work. It just turned into like a kindergarten finger painting class. I was like, yeah, next time I'll put the gloves on. It's like, stain's probably more dangerous than spinning table saw blades in my hands. Never mind.
Alan's going to fess up. What have you done, Alan? We want to know.
Oh God, you look who you're talking to here.
We can't.
As far as funny goes, I don't know if I have anything really all that funny. I remember. You remember the series I did called Intervention? I've actually pushed myself in filming so hard that I've kind of injured myself, and that was pretty stupid. I was shooting a scene where I leap up onto my workbench for whatever reason. I don't even remember why I was doing it, but it took a few takes, and somewhere around the 4th or 5th take, I launched myself way too hard, and I cleared the entire bench. And we're talking an 8x4 foot bench.
Wow.
So I left airplane style over my entire bench, face first into the jointer on the other side of the room. Like I took a running leap off of a cooler on the floor, and yeah, that wasn't fun. On the non-funny side of stuff, I did make a video about this, but I almost lost 3 fingers one time, tripping into the table saw and skimming 3 of my fingers over the top of the blade.
Ow.
That was an awful experience. That wasn't funny at all.
You should send that clip into Canada's Funniest Home Videos. Got yourself $250.
We laugh about these things, but honestly, guys, listening, you got to stay safe. There's been some near misses. I think we've all had near misses, and they're kind of good because it kind of gets you back into sort of, need to be careful, need to think about what I'm doing here. But I definitely pay to see people cut their fingers off because as long as they're not my fingers, because that wouldn't be funny.
No, it's not. It's funny because we all have our fingers and toes today, but at the time it wasn't exactly funny. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's all fun and games until someone loses a finger, for sure. So right, okay, then let's dive into the main topic tonight. Hopefully everyone's aware. presumably because you saw the thumbnail that was produced. But we're talking about where we get our inspiration and, you know, where our ideas come from. And I personally want to do a full Spanish Inquisition on Joe, because I think we all know that the stuff that comes out of his head is quite simply baffling, certainly to me. So, Joe, where'd you get your ideas, fella?
I really don't know. It's one of those things where you'll see something that's already been produced, mass produced, wherever, and then it's a spark. I really don't know how to describe it, because it's taking something that already exists, because I'm sure a lot of people will be aware that it's very hard to come up with completely unique ideas. Everything has been done, and it's been done 100 times over. So to find those little tweaks that you can do to the designs, those are what just pop into my head, kind of thing. So at the moment, I don't mind talking about it. I'm making some passport holders. Now, they've been done loads of times before, and I was thinking, well, how can I make it different? Well, on the British passports anyway, there's a crest on the front. There's the royal crest, and that's quite a nice design. And I thought, well, I don't really want to be covering that up, and I was just thinking of different ways to show it off. I originally thought maybe if I carved in the design into the wood and filled it with milliput, how I usually do all the while. And I thought, well, if I put a little window inside. So then it got me thinking, well, I don't want to be messing around with plexiglass or even glass itself, so why not just cut a hole and fill it with clear resin? So that's what I've been trying. So that inspiration was brought about by myself, just trying to do something different, as opposed to seeing something and wanting to reproduce it, if that makes sense.
So it's basically an idea you had that you kind of you stumbled upon.
Yep.
The inspiration is basically, but it was started by you looking to do something different to begin with. It just something happened you weren't expecting to have happen.
That's it. I think the vast majority of my projects, it's already been done. Like the core concept of the thing has already been done. Go back to the coasters. How many people have made drinks coasters before? It's nothing special, and it's just, what can I do to put a twist on it? And then do a quick Google search. Has it been done before? I can't seem to find it. Okay, that's what I'll do. And that seems to be the way that it goes. But what about everyone else? What kind of things do you do to get yourself in the creative mind, sort of thing?
The first thing I wrote down, Joe, was going to sound like I'm repeating you, because I said a lot of inspiration for me sometimes comes from other people's ideas. I mean, I'll see something that person made, and whether it's functionally or because of the visual aspect of it, I will figure out how I want to make it my way. You know, whether I change the joinery, or I change the way it's put together, or if I take the idea, the basis of that idea, and just kind of change the overall look of it. A lot of the stuff that I come up with, that I decide that I get excited about to get out in the shop and go do, comes from what other people have already done. And it's like kind of taking what their work and just, like you said, giving it that tweak, and just kind of making it your own and going in your own direction, which is a different direction that, you know, hasn't been possibly done before. That's
it. It's hard. It's hard, isn't it, to actually describe inspiration? I think that's got to be one of the hardest concepts to actually put down. This is what to do to be creative. I think it's very difficult.
What about you, Richard?
Well, I was just going to sort of say, off the back of what Joe said about describing inspiration, it's not necessarily, you know, trying to describe. Well, I guess it is in a way, but it isn't. You know, where does your inspiration come from? Is the sort of you know, where do we get inspired? I agree with you both. It is a very difficult thing to explain. It just happens, and I think it just happens in either the weirdest link, or you see something, or you remember something you've seen, or even you don't think about it. You might be in the middle of a project that you've got to do for a client, or for your other half, or that you want to do for a need, whatever. And then as you're thinking about how you're going to go about doing it, you remember something you've seen, and it might not even be anything related. So something.
I guess maybe I can put it a different way, and maybe give it the spin you're looking for, Richard. I don't know. You follow up after this, because the one thing I've found about finding inspiration for me is that I have to be in the right mindset to recognize something, to recognize something, to catch that inspiration. First of all, in other words, I have to allow myself an attitude of being very open-minded enough to see whatever is being presented to me. And it has to be a relatively relaxed state of mind. I mean, if you're uptight and you're worried about things, you're not going to find inspiration that way. It's like you have to allow yourself to be in that creative mode for it to be of any benefit. And sometimes things just hit you in the face when you are in that kind of mindset. Do you follow? It's a headspace thing more than it is anything else. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, it's almost like, you can't see the wood for the trees because you're thinking about it so much, you get distracted by actually something which is not a creative mindset. When you're trying to specifically to think about one thing, you get, blindsided, blinkers down, and it's tunnel vision. Do you remember last week I was telling you about this collaboration? And I've agreed to do it, and there's a deadline, and there's another 20 odd people all doing this thing. The pressure's on. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And I was chatting to Kat about this, and she's like, well, when is it? I was like, in less than 3 weeks. So, pressure's on there. I was like, yeah, thanks for that. And what I've started doing in the last couple of weeks, actually, is turning my phone off, leaving it at home, and going and taking the dog for a walk. And that sounds really, I don't know, potentially cliche, but unrelated. When you're just walking out in the countryside with the dog, your mind starts to wander and it starts to relax, and you start to chat. Presumably if there's somebody with you, you have a conversation that's completely unrelated to what you're actually trying to think about. So it's kind of like a downtime when you're asleep almost. And we're walking along the railway line, and it just, as we were talking, it wasn't my idea. I'm rubbish at coming up with ideas, and I'll be quite open about that. She said, well, why don't you do this? I was like, yeah, okay. And this idea started to evolve. I was like, how the hell did you think of that? And she goes, well, as we were walking down the railway line, I can see all the sleepers all lined up in front of me like a ladder. And suddenly, if you see the video or you know what I'm going to make, you can see where that idea throws in. And it's completely unrelated between this collaboration project and a railway line, and things link in. And we are imaginative types, we are creative types, whether we think we are or not. These weird things start to pull in. Does that make sense, or am I completely waffling?
You make total sense there, Richard. I kind of do the same thing. I do the same thing as all of you, really. I'll start by watching videos and looking at projects online and stuff, but sometimes I get this block in me, and when I get like a complete and utter block, I leave the shop and I don't walk the dog because I don't have a dog, but I play guitar. And I completely lose myself playing guitar for like an hour, and I'm not thinking about the instrument at all. I'm thinking about what I could be creating, and man, does it ever help?
It's kind of, you fall into it.
Yeah, you get into a whole other headspace.
What about you, Jamie?
Well, going back to, and I hate to do it, the Nutty Pen. That idea was actually, I actually came about that by complete accident. I was actually going to the shop to get some CA glue because I created the pencil pen to start off with, and all in my head I wanted to do loads and loads of different kind of weird pens, but I didn't know what. I was just going to the shop to buy some super glue or CA glue. I was walking there, picked up the glue, and in my head I was thinking, right, what else could I get? Just kind of at the corner of my eye I just saw the bolts, and without thinking I was kind of like drawn to them. Now, I didn't go into the shop thinking I'm going to go and get nuts and bolts and blah, blah, blah. It just kind of like, so it's like when you're not thinking about something, that's kind of what drags you to it. It's kind of weird how it works. But another thing that I find helps me is, like Andy Berkey released a video with like the brain dump, I think is what he called it.
Yeah.
Yep.
He had like carry a piece of paper or a notepad or something like that around with you. Now, a lot of the time my head it doesn't stop thinking with ideas. Now there may be ideas that people have already released that I can't stop thinking about their videos and how I can adapt it to make it my own. But I just every now and again I'll write it down, or I've got a notepad in my coat pocket. I've got a notepad next to the bed because sometimes I just can't sleep. Like I maybe get 2 hours not asleep because I've got ideas and my head just won't let me sleep. So I'll just write it down and then I'll be able to sleep.
That's interesting because, and it's funny you bring up Andy Berkey because he was the first guy I thought of when we started talking about this too, because he's opened a lot of people's eyes on how to actually use that headspace. And anyway, he also did that interview with that doctor talking about the maker's creative mind.
Yes.
And that was a seriously good interview that he did. And at one point in that episode, they were talking about ideas. And how you may see something that kind of gives you an inspiration, but you stick it in the back of your head because you got to go on and do your daily things, whatever the case may be. And it could be a week later, it could be a month later, it could be a year later. It's like the back of your mind is processing this idea all the time. And then one day it just pops to the front and goes, here I am. This is what you want to do with that idea. And it's kind of a cool thing because my question was going to be, do you, when you get inspiration, when inspiration does hit you, do you act on those ideas immediately or generally, or do you stick them away and sit on them for a little bit to let the back of your mind kind of churn away on it? I mean, when you see something, and I guess it really depends, I would assume, but is it normally something you immediately act on, guys, or is it something you kind of
me personally, I think it depends on the difficulty of the project. I mean, more recently, you got Sarah from Wartooth Designs. She does the drawings of the potato characters and things like that. And not always, but I every now and again I kind of bring them to life in my photo edits when I do it. But more recently, I've done a wooden potato of Sarah and posted it on my Instagram and things like that. So it's kind of that was kind of like an inspiration from Sarah because I always watch her Twitch streams. So that was kind of thing. It's a real simple project. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and do it now, But one of the projects I've wanted to do is like an Adirondack chair, which I think someone commented on YouTube, which of like a bucket list project, and that's been something I've wanted to do for a long time. That's
cool, but you're not doing it right away. What about you, Joe? Because some of the ideas that you come up with, like for instance, we'll talk those coasters. Did you have that idea and go, and straight away go and do it, or did you sit on that idea for a little bit?
Well, no. I think while thinking about the answer to your question, it's actually given me a bit of inspiration to give some tips to actually be creative. Because what I actually do when I'll get an idea, I always think that it's no good and there's something better. And that forces me to think of other ideas. And I could go through 5, 6, 10 completely different ideas and always end up going back to the first one that I had and do that one instead. But what I do, I question absolutely everything. I'm really into product design. What you have to remember is everything around us in the world has been designed by somebody. It wasn't just thrown together like that. It's everything about it has got a purpose. It was meant to be designed that way. So start questioning the things in your surroundings. Why did they do it like that? Why was that designed to be that shape? Is it because of the ergonomics, or does it serve a function? And when I get my head around why different people have designed different products and different areas in that particular way, I can then apply those to my own ideas and my own projects. And that's when I start questioning my own ideas. Why would I think first to put nails in the coaster? Why did that originally come from? Well, that came from cutting with an Evolution saw. They always show nails in the end of a board, how the saw can cut wood and metal at the same time. But then I'd go off on, well, not everybody uses those tools. What if I put a resin inlay in instead? And I'd go through 10 iterations, and it's like, no, keep it simple, go back to the first one. So really, to answer your question, Chris, it's if somebody's asked me to make something, then it's got to be done there and then, and I'll come up with an idea and a concept and I act on it straight away. If it's for myself personally, then it could be months down the line before I ever get to do it, because I'm coming up with different things all the while, and it just gets pushed to the back, kind of thing.
Just going back to what Jamie was saying about his sleeping habits and having a notepad by the side of the bed. Does anybody else do that? Have a little notepad or?
Yep, sure do.
Yeah. Was it when you've got an idea in your head? and you kind of can't stop thinking about anything other than that idea. You get an itching, yeah? Now, you've had your inspiration, you've come up with the idea, now you want to get on and produce it, make it, whatever it is, yeah? So
that was kind of my question, and you just answered it, Richard. So for you, when you get that inspiration, you automatically get the itch to go out and do it.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So it really does depend purely on what the idea is. So I carry, obviously, my phone like everyone else does, and I've started in the last maybe 3 or 4 months just taking photographs of random things. If that random thing produces a spark, yeah? And I don't question whether it's relevant or not. I just take the picture now, and then it gets maybe looked at later, or if it's important, then it subconsciously is stored in the back of the head, and it will come forward later on. And some things do and some things don't, but there's a record of that, yeah? But to kind of focus in on that, the idea has happened, and you're now thinking about it, and you've now got the itch to make that thing. I've got a phrase for that, and it's a phrase that Kat came up with, because she gets it as well when she's thinking about a new crochet or knitting project, yarn project that she's going to make. And it might actually make sense to people. We call it brain fizz, because your brain is literally fizzing with an idea that you then want to get on with. And that's where the name for my channel and my website derives from. So I can totally 100% kind of get behind what Jamie's saying, because that's exactly what happens to me. You wake up in the middle of the night, or you just can't sleep. You'll lie in bed for an hour and a half thinking about this one idea. And then how am I going to go about making this, or how am I going to go about doing it? And that's when the questioning comes in for the term that Joe was talking about.
That's kind of cool. I always wondered where you came up with the name for your channel. That's really interesting.
In answer to your question, I didn't. That was 100% Kat, because as I've no doubt said before, because I say it all the time, I do not have, or I do not consider myself to have, a creative mindset, an artistic sort of aptitude. I am far more analytical. The idea is there. Now my brain kicks into overdrive. Is how am I going to do that? How am I going to make that thing? So I rely really heavily on the outside world to get the idea. But once the idea is there, then my mind goes into overdrive as to the nuts and bolts of how's that actually going to happen. Does that? So I look at
that makes a lot of sense, Richard. I understand that kind of, because I'm kind of halfway in between. But you know what? We have an incredibly creative mind with us here today too. Alan, where he comes up with some of his stuff, I have no clue. He reminds me of Joe in that creative aspect. So Alan, chime in here, buddy. What's your thought process here?
Well, I think I kind of come from both sides. It really depends on what we're doing in our day-to-day lives. I spend a lot of hours at work, so my job isn't all that hard. I just have to be there, basically. So I have a lot of time to think at work, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day. So I can think of skits and projects and whatnot all day long. And I use an app on my phone called OneNote, where if it's a lot involved in it and I've been thinking on it for a couple hours, I'll start jotting down notes in OneNote. And but the flip side of that, the second I'm on my property, I get off work, I get home, I immediately flip open OneNote, turn the camera on, and just start filming. Just like if it's a Saturday and I have an idea and I think it hasn't been done, or hopefully hasn't been done, I'll start filming immediately. I won't even think about it. I'll jump right into it. But going back to inspiration, I'd have to say the main inspiration I've had for entertainment and making and literally everything I do now has been Kevin Smith, the podcaster and filmmaker. And it's not what he does. It's a speech he once told, and I'll try to do it very, very quickly here. He did a project called Burn in Hell, where he did a small speech where basically it's there's two kinds of people on this earth. There's why people and why not people. And we in the maker community are why not people. I mean, so many people are going to come up to you over time and say to you, but you'll say to them, for instance, hey, I want to start this YouTube channel. It's creative and fun. And they look at you and they just say, why? It's going to take time and money. And I'm looking back at that person, just watching the gears turn and thinking, why not? Like, just do it. What are we waiting for? You only got one life. Just get out there and do it. So that's kind of where I come from all of that.
That's a great analogy. Why and why not people? That makes a lot of sense.
We are why not people, or I am a why not man. I don't wait. I just get out there and do.
Absolutely. It's better to, how do they say, better to seek forgiveness than it is permission.
Exactly. Yes.
Get on and do it.
Just do it.
And then look back on it rather than trying to constantly look forward to, if you think about it, there's a million reasons why not to do something. That's easy.
And I do the same thing Joe does. If I think of a project, I will think there's 8 other ways to do it that are going to be better, and which way should I be doing it? And if I start it this way, it might not work 10 steps that way. And that drove my brain insane. I had to get out of that mode of thinking as best as I possibly could. But I do understand, Joe, it's really hard not to think ahead like that. It's smart to think ahead. Don't get me wrong. You should think ahead, but maybe I should think ahead a little more.
I think I differ to most of the people in the maker community, because I don't jot down any of my ideas until I'm absolutely ready to start the project. And I don't know if it's some kind of mental thing that I've got, but if I start writing down an idea, then I never do it. And I can't explain why. I've got a folder on my desktop of labelled ideas, and everything in there from a couple of years ago I look at now, and there's no way I'm ever going to do it. But if I'd just kept it in my head and not actually committed and put it down, then I probably would have made them. And I don't really know why that is, but I'm pretty sure I can't be the only one, so maybe there's others that can relate to me.
I wonder if it's maybe because what you've done is you've created a self-imposed to-do list, and that's kind of it's kind of a negative thing, and so you're not really as excited about it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense, yeah. Thinking about it like that.
I'm exactly the same with Joe there. I've got scroll store portraits and things like that, and pictures that I've done, and I've got hundreds of them that I've made over the years. I'm just exactly the same. I'm just not interested in them now. I'd rather look at different pictures that I could come up with. So,
does anybody, when you're actually making a project, do you ever get like halfway through a project, have a new idea, and then regret that you're actually doing this one and wish you'd spent your time on this new idea?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Halfway through, that was going to be my next question of you guys. Because when you get that inspiration, I just jotted this down just a couple seconds ago because I think Richard made me think of it. When you get the inspiration for the idea, I don't know, that would be a really different, unique type of piece of furniture, or a kind of a really cool mirror. And you start to make it. But can you visualize exactly what you want that thing to look like when it's done, before you even start? Do you guys have that kind of a mental visualization that you're able to see what you want it to look like before you begin?
Let me start with this one. I can always visualize exactly what I want, but not once has it ever looked anything like what I visualized by the time I get to the end.
Which goes back to what Joe was just saying.
I've never used plans. Everything I do is based on imagination or a picture I saw or another video I saw. But all the mistakes I make along the way and then figure out how to fix along the way just makes it evolve into it. Sometimes it's a different title altogether by the time I'm done the project.
Absolutely. I don't use plans either, ever. And I've only ever really followed plans once or twice. And as a result of that, I don't put plans on my website. And it's kind of, in a way, frustrating when people say, "Oh, have you got the plans for that?" And I'm like, no, because they, just as Alan was saying, it came out of my head. Either because I saw it, a video, a picture, or whatever, and I kind of backward engineered it in my backward head, and this is what I came out with, and it's kind of, the same, identical, similar, or loosely based on, whatever that may be. And actually, if you go onto my website in the free plans section, the only plans that are on there are templates that I've used either as a cutting template for the reindeers I did at Christmas, or another reindeer I did previous Christmas, or there's something else on there and I can't remember what it is now. They're just like templates, and you could quite easily just look at it, close your eyes and scribble something down from memory, and it would still turn out exactly the same.
Yeah, but that was a strange looking elf that put them on there.
Well, yeah, the elves do that, obviously, because I haven't got the skills or the patience or the inclination to do long, complicated plans. But likewise, you can get the kind of inspiration from seeing something that someone else has made, and just by not following plans to do your own version of it, even if you make it to the same size and the same materials and the same finish and all the rest of it, even video it in the same sort of way, you've still put your spin on it because you've done it.
Yeah, well, let me ask Joe, because I know that Joe probably is the majority of time, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Joe, the majority of time, you probably don't have plans for the things that you do either. But I do know that you're involved in a relatively complicated build right now with that Maloof rocking chair. And even though you have the plans in front of you, I'm going to bet $1 to donuts that you have already put your own twist on those plans and are doing kind of things your way as opposed to the way the plans are telling you to do them. Am I wrong?
You are wrong, yeah.
They're done to the letter.
You're actually relying on those plans 100% and you're following them step by step, exactly.
100% to the letter, in the order that Mark does them, absolutely all the way, following it 100%.
I'm surprised by that, only because I know you, and I'm surprised that you actually are doing. But let me ask you this question then, Joe. Are you enjoying this process more than the other, or are you just finding it different, and really the enjoyment is the same?
I'm enjoying it, but from a different point of view. When I'm doing a project that's completely out of my head, that's not using plans, like this Maloof chair is the only project I've ever used plans on. Everything else is just completely out of my head. And I enjoy that because it's the creative process of having the picture in my head and wanting to create it in the real world. And I always end up with how it pictures in my head, but how I get there always changes. But as far as the rocking chair, being a piece of furniture that really relies on comfort. I mean, making a table, you got to make sure it's the right height, the right size, and it's done. But for a chair to be comfortable, I was really worried about that. So that's why I wanted to follow the plans. And I'm seeing this as a learning process. I'm learning all the way through the different techniques, joinery, shaping, everything like that to make something comfortable. So once I've made this first chair, I'll very likely just keep the dimensions and then go off on my own idea, knowing that as long as I stick within these parameters, it's going to be comfortable. So I am enjoying it, not from a creative side of things, but from a learning new skills and knowing that I'll be able to apply them to different projects in the future.
Okay, let me just kind of take another step to that, Joe. You've taken the plans that were published, and step one was make the seat, was it? The seat section?
That's it.
Okay,
yep.
And then, so you did that, and then you did was it the front legs?
The front legs.
Okay,
yep.
And then the next step is
the back legs.
The back legs. Have you done the back legs?
Yep.
You've done the back. So, right. Okay. So now you've done just the first 3 steps. Yeah. So ignore the rest of the chair. Looking back on what you've made, with the experience that you've gained and the knowledge you've now got, could you have made the back legs before you made the seat?
If you made everything perfect, then it should all slot together.
Yeah, but some things are going to need tweaks to get them.
That's it.
So yeah.
So like you fit the legs to match the seat. So if my joinery at the back was slightly off, then I can make the legs also slightly off to match up. So it kind of works that way.
Okay. So do you think if you were now 20 chairs in, you would, just on these first 3 steps, have maybe a different way of doing it, or a better appreciation of whatever it was you did in step 1? You then know that this particular notch is more or less relevant than perhaps alluded to in the plans for when it fits into step 3, which you haven't done yet, so you don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, possibly, because I think from the very beginning, I was really concerned about every aspect of each cut. But now as I'm getting further into just this first project, I'm realising that it's only the joinery that matters. The bits in between don't. So now I've got that in my head, I'm a lot more confident. So if I was starting off in that mindset, I think I would have made a lot less mistakes. I wouldn't have worried as much, and it probably would have turned out better.
And that's kind of an experience thing, isn't it? And the reason I asked this, just to kind of bear with me, when I was a nipper, probably around about age 7 or 8, I started making those little plastic Airfix model aeroplanes. Yeah, do you guys have those in the States and Canada? And
oh yeah, of course, yeah. I think Revel is the name of the company that puts the models out here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the companies, and there's loads of them. But you kind of know what I'm talking about. Little plastic model airplanes. So in the box, you get a whole load of plastic parts, and then a book that says, step 1, glue the wheels to the struts, or glue the pilot to the seat, or whatever it is, and it goes down 50. When you've made umpteen of these plastic models, and you're now in your mid-teens, as I was, still making them. You make bigger ones, or you make airplanes that you kind of idolized as a kid or whatever, but you've made dozens. You get to realize that actually to do step 15, 16 and 17 before step 1 and 2 actually makes more sense down the line, and you start to kind of pull these things in. Yeah,
right.
So the plans and the instructions are relevant, but you've got your own twist on it. Yeah,
that's kind of where I was going with Joe about asking him if he has gone off track as of yet. And I bet I bet you then and Joe, I assume you're probably doing this step by step because you've never done it before, and so it's a learning process for you. And so the next time that you do it, you may not do things in the same order, and so I may be more on point with the second chair that you make as opposed to the one you're currently making now, I guess is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. The only way that I've been kind of forced to veer off the plans is when I've made mistakes, and that kind of is the only time I'll change ideas I've had for myself. If I make a mistake, then I'll try and think of a way to either fix it or incorporate it into the design. So, I mean, a big thing about it was I'd put biscuit joints to join the 5 pieces to form the seat. And getting all mixed up with the angles, I'd actually put them on the top when they was meant to be at the bottom. So when I was carving, I had to go slightly deeper at the back to remove these slots that I'd cut with biscuits in them.
Right.
So that led me to create kind of a deeper slope than Mark recommended, but it feels comfortable. So now I know I can afford to go deeper towards the back, and I can take that further on into different projects.
Right. I guess so that kind of brings up the question of inspiration as far as knowledge allows you to be inspired, perhaps more. Once you've got the knowledge in between your ears, it's a lot easier to intertwine crazy ideas and come up with a way to do it. And I was going to ask this question, and I'm going to pose it to Alan just because I'm curious about his answer. I get personally, I get a lot of my inspiration from nature, to be honest. Because I kind of live in the woods, sort of, in my area, and I spend a lot of time in the mornings out there drinking coffee and walking around just because it's peaceful. It puts me in that mindset that we started talking about, of starting my day in a very quiet, relaxed mode. And I'll see something, whether it's a unique shape and how a tree is growing in a different way, or a matter of just looking at something and incorporating that into a project in either the joinery and how I do it, or some sort of design idea that I'll get from nature, just by noticing the little things that normally you would just walk by and never pay attention to. And this is my question. Many times I find ideas like that, though, and I never act on them. For one of two reasons, because I either have no need for the idea, or in a real way of actually, due to the limitations I may have in material and or skills, I never fulfill the idea itself. And my question for Alan was basically that: do you get ideas like that and just never really act on them? You kind of go, "That's a cool idea, and I really like it, but you know what? I'm just not going to do it, either because I don't have the skills, material, or a need." Is that? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. First thing that comes to mind is a film gantry for my shop. That's probably the number one project I've been wanting to do since I think like last summer. And I'm finding it very, very hard to build up the confidence to even start it, because I know it's a little bit beyond my skill set. But then I keep telling myself over and over and over, you're not going to know unless you try. So I keep wanting to try. I keep trying to gather the materials. I keep starting to write down notes to plan it out, and it never does come to fruition, because I feel like I need another guy in here to help me with it, and it's a time thing, right? Like it's going to shut everything down for like a month, my trying to design this thing. And like I'm talking a gantry that runs the length of the entire same thing like John Heiss has in his shop. I think he just put up a video about it recently, like literally in the last couple of days. But that's a thing that I think about that gantry a lot, and I can't bring myself to start it.
Are you a why guy or a why not guy?
Oh, shut up, Jamie.
I I honestly think it's really healthy to have all these ideas, but at the same time to accept the fact that they're not all going to happen. And for me, that's kind of part of the pleasure in a weird way, because to have 10 ideas and accept the fact that you're only going to maybe do 2 of them in your lifetime. So
there's only so much time in the day. And the gantry is something I know I will do someday. I'm definitely going to do it. The time's just not right. But I'll know that when the day comes and the time is right, and I'll sit there and I'll probably end up spending 2 days straight doing the whole thing with no sleep.
Yeah, I mean, our time here is finite, but I think to not get hung up on the idea that you've got X number of ideas, but you're only going to get a percentage of those done. The important ideas, like Chris was saying about, you see that idea in nature maybe, and you've got not a need for it there and then. If you take a picture of it or make a note of it or just bury it away in your head, that will at some stage resurface, whether it's through 2 or 3 other ideas that you have in the earth. I mean, we've joked on here, and this is kind of a poignant point for me. This is why I bring it up. We've joked on here with Joe and Jamie several times about Milliput. Yeah. And I'm working at the moment on a client project that I was asked to do a few months ago. We've been sort of talking about this, that, and the other. Part of it is to inlay this design that I've been sent. And I've been trying to spray and infill, do an inlay so that they're just black. Yeah. I've tried spray paint. I've tried acrylic paint. I actually mixed up some dye with some epoxy, and the epoxy didn't set, so it's still tacky and it can't be sanded. And I just went, I'll use some Milliput. I've never had a need for it, but I've been exposed to it. We've been joking around with this potential idea that's never been relevant to me. I've never, I'm not going to do a bowl with Milliput inlays. I'm not going to do a pen, but now it's relevant. Now it will have a need. Yeah.
Right. Which goes back to what I was saying. Knowledge is inspiration.
Sorry.
It can well be. Yeah.
I'm going to actually write that down. A bowl made out of Milliput.
No, like that didn't mean made out. Well, I guess you could actually.
I'm going to write that down.
No, in Jamie's world, a bowl made out of Milliput makes a ton of sense. Don't discourage him, Richard.
That's a ton of Milliput, though.
A bowl completely made out of Milliput.
There you go.
Have you ever used Fimo? Or heard of Fimo?
Not as far as I know.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Has anyone else, before I start ranting on a little tangent here?
No.
Fimo is like a plasticine. Yeah, you buy it and it's like a little plasticine block, but then you put it in the oven and you bake it and it becomes plastic.
I've got some. I'm here saying no, I don't know what it is.
We knew Joe would.
You can get it in all kinds of wacky, crazy colours, metallics and glow-in-the-dark stuff, and it just is mad. And there's another brand name of it as well, and I can't remember what the kind of generic term is, but Google Fimo, it's awesome. I've used it for making pen blanks, and I've used it for inlays as well. It's just kind of that comes out of the knowledge thing that Chris was talking about. These things linked, blah 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 blah. Yeah, that might help somebody, either one of you four or somebody listening.
I think what could be a good topic for the future, actually, just by Jamie saying making an entire bowl out of Milliput, and the first thing that pops into my head is how much is that going to cost. Maybe a topic could be how money can either help or hinder us in terms of our creativity, whether that's needing to buy tools or materials to make projects, and if you get a commission to make a project, you've got that excuse to actually put out that bit of money to make something you've been wanting to make for ages. So that could be something good to look at in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
Awesome
idea.
I've always had a few ideas for different methods to make things, and it's really bizarre. I've had in the last week, I've had 2 separate customers come to me asking, can I build arcade machine cabinets?
Great.
And now I've got an excuse to build an arcade machine, because it's like, that would be so cool, but I've got no need for it. I've got no room for it, but it'd just be nice. But I'm not just going to build it because it's nice, because it's going to cost me loads of money. But now, like you saying, Joe, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I want somebody to approach me for a commission that pays for a Festool domino. So yeah, I'm all about that because I really want one of those. I really, really do. Anyway, all right, I'm sorry. So anybody out there who wants something made, it's going to cost you $1,000 because $500 of that needs to go to that domino.
You need to make a custom box for one, because then you've got to buy one to get all the proper measurements and
See,
everything.
there you go. There you go.
Well, the price of cutting boards has gone up.
I don't like you, Jamie.
Awesome, brilliant. That kind of is. I think that's been a really good. I was a bit nervous, and I think Chris was as well, that we wouldn't be able to fill a whole show with this. But I guess that's what happens when there's 5 people talking.
We can make it to it. And
Absolutely. Well, why not? We'll just wrap it on for another 5 minutes, and that'll be the time done. So, what's everyone? I mean, I've kind of alluded to a couple of things that I'm either working on now or going to be working on. So, what are you guys actually up to at the moment in terms of projects that you're happy to talk about, jobs, and things you've been watching? So, who wants to dive?
I'll go first, I guess. And I'm always afraid to answer this because every week I go, at least for the past 3 weeks, I've gone, I'm not going to do anything. I'm taking time off. I'm not. And then I always end up putting a video out like the day after this podcast comes out. So
you did another quick tips video.
No. Because, but like the conversation goes, I mean, all of a sudden I'll get an inspiration and get excited, and I'll run out there and go, oh yeah, I should do that. Because when I know there's work that needs to be done, I have a hard time sitting still and not doing it. I like to clean my plate before I put my feet up, if you know what I mean. What I'm talking about. And so that's what happened last week. That's why I because I knew I needed a new sled for straight cuts, and so I went out and I just did a video on that. But I really, honestly, and I'm not going to promise I'm not going to have a video out tomorrow because it may happen. I don't know, but I'm really going to try to take this week and possibly the next week off because I'm heading up to the woodworking shows in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's coming up next weekend. And I'm planning on spending 3 days in Springfield, Mass, hanging out with a bunch of other guys at the woodworking shows and then coming back. And I just don't know that I'll have time to do anything. So I don't have anything on my plate at the moment that I can actually say I'm working on. So, but you never know, stuff happens, obviously. As
always. So what have you been watching then, Chris? Have you been on?
I'm going to throw a shout out to Matt DiResta, and only because I don't know if you guys remember, Matt and I and Jason McGinn and Matt Brander did a collab, as opposed to a collab, a while back, doing DIY tips and tricks. And Matt really liked the format that I came up with in order for us to do that collaboration. And he said, hey, Chris, I want to do this again because I really like the format you came up with and how we did this. And I told him, I said, Matt, I think that if you want to do it again, go ahead and do it again, but do it with somebody, besides myself. Do it with somebody that's going to help you out. Because Matt's looking to grow his channel, and you guys know how I feel about that. I don't really care where mine goes. If it goes up, great. If it goes down, I don't care either. But Matt's looking to grow his channel. I said, Matt, take the format and do it with some folks that can help you out. And last week he put the video out. He did the collaboration with his Uncle Jimmy and Lynn from Darben Over, and they did that. And Matt gave me a shout out at the beginning of it, even saying it was my idea and my format, and I let him borrow it. And actually, I gave it to him. I don't care. I mean, nobody has copyright on these things. I mean, you could have taken it and never mentioned me. So I just want to make sure I gave him some love back and say, if you haven't checked it out, there's a 3-maker collaboration with Matt DiResta, Jimmy DiResta, and Lynn from Darben Over, and they put the videos out last week. So if you have the opportunity, go back and look at it, and maybe you'll learn something.
So what about you, Alan? Are you working on anything, watching anything good that you want to share with us?
Not working on anything in the shop right now, except for my own computers and all that kind of fun stuff that we finally got figured out. Thank God. What I'm watching, Eloy Escajado Woodworking. If you don't already know him, go on over and check him out. Eloy's editing is just juicy. It's the best word for it. That man is juicy. The way he edits, it's got like a garage style edit to it. I just love the way it looks. He's just an amazing guy. So be sure to go on over and check him out. I've never done him before on here, have I?
No, not in front of us anyway.
Not in front of us anyway. Yeah.
Well, I'm doing him again.
That's why the camera's switched off. Okay, I think we move on to Who wants to take that one over?
Oh man,
The sexy shadow.
Joe, save us. Joe, help.
I've got a quick tip video that should be out as this podcast goes live, fingers crossed, but it's actually stemmed from me making the passport holders that I've actually mentioned earlier in this podcast. I started making like 4 at the same time because I wanted to do some different iterations of them, and in the end I've ended up with 3 because I ruined one of them, so there's just going to be 3 in the video.
Not passport holders.
Yeah, passport holders.
And is this for like, have you got like half a dozen passports stashed in a lockbox under a floorboard or something that we...
That's it. For different nationalities. I just wanted to see what they'd look like with different woods and different ideas, because I've got a clear window in them to show the actual design of the passport through it. So I've done one with that and then a couple without. But a quick tip stemmed from that video, which I thought might be useful to people. So that should be out today. But as far as people I've been watching Mitch Peacock. His channel is Made in Wood, and he put out a sundial joinery, and his hand tool work is amazing, and I really love the...
Really good.
It's brilliant, and I love the way that he explains it all as well, because a lot of the hand tool woodworkers, I'll watch them, but they give very little details away. I mean, obviously there's a good few exceptions, but Mitch, he puts all the information out there. He's really clear with his explanations. He makes it look like anybody can do it, and he's challenged me to attempt it. I don't know if I could. Mitch, if you're listening, I will try one day, but I don't know, that's some amazing joinery. If you haven't seen it, you've got to go and check it out. Mitch Peacock, Made in Wood on YouTube. Check it out.
Absolutely. And that kind of ties in with what we were talking about a minute ago about the inspiration. You see these things and not necessarily, you don't have the instructions written down. You don't have somebody showing you this is how you cut this seemingly impossible joint. And he sat down and gone, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to just dive in and work it out and see what happens. And, there are no plans, but what the hey? And that, that can be food for anyone to get stuck in. So that's kind of cool. Jamie's there nodding his head. Are you working on anything, Jamie, that we dare hear about?
Well, I've actually got a pen order today. Now, I'm a little bit reluctant about doing it, to be honest, for more than one reason. The one reason is because of the past history with the pen orders. But the other reason is, if they had come to me and turned around and said, we just want a black and red pen, I would have been happy to do it. But then they turned around and said it's a Man United themed pen. And,
It's a what pen? Somebody
a Manchester United themed pen.
Oh, Manchester United themed pen.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I don't like Manchester United.
Let me explain that one. Manchester United is a much better football team than the one that Jamie supports, basically.
And the team I support is a much better team than what Joe supports.
I'm saying nothing on that one.
Toronto Maple Leafs is a better team.
They're all just a bunch of overpaid prima donnas kicking a bag of wind round a field.
And but going to the shout out. The shout out is it's Dave from the channel Turning Works. He's a fairly new channel. He's got about 300 subscribers, and he's putting out some really, really good projects at the moment. He's done a few pendants at the moment using milliput resin, which obviously Joe's going to enjoy. And it seems Richard will as well now.
Yeah, maybe.
Dave from Turning Works is the shout out.
Cool. Just going back to that pen, is it actually for a United supporter?
It is, yeah.
And have they specifically specified that it needs to be United themed?
It's not for. They haven't actually ordered it. It's from somebody else as a birthday present.
Right. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. But just to throw an idea in, perhaps something that came into my head. I've got no interest in football, but have you seen the guys that make they cast their own resin pen blanks around brass tubes?
Yeah.
I've seen people do it with maps and circuit boards and all kinds of crazy things. You could maybe do it with the United little badge symbol.
I've actually seen a few people. Do you know the women that get the fingernail stickers on their nails?
Yes.
Yeah. Little blobs and stuff.
Because they're really, really thin, you can put them on. And you know, you talking about the Airfix kits. You get the little stickers on them as well. There's companies that you can get them personalised made.
Yeah, there's loads of people doing that. Like if you go back to like the model aeroplane scene, there's people out there that are basically like us in a little workshop in their house or their garden shed, and they just make specific markings for some individual's plane. There's a massive cottage industry in that field. So somebody will be able to knock up some United badge,
which is pretty good if you want, as well. If you want to do like a monogram name for a wedding gift or birthday gift, or I mean,
it can't be that hard. It's only like 2 different shades of blue. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
You could add some grass into the bottom, do a pitch at the bottom, and then work your way up to the United logo. Cast some clear resin with grass in it.
That'd be quite good. Yeah.
And then tell them it came from Old Trafford and like triple the price.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, Richard, who are you watching? Come on.
Well, I've been working on a few kind of back end things in my channel in the last week. So I'm actually at the moment implementing some changes. So if you've been over to my channel, you might have noticed that the channel banner has changed. I'm looking to take not a different direction. I'm not going to change things up, but I'm going to have a bit more emphasis on my channel towards routing. I still have all the builds and all the other shenanigans, but I'm going to try and get a little bit more in depth with the routing. So that's where those changes are going. And as I've been doing that, I stumbled on a channel called The Game Theorists, which is actually predominantly a kind of gaming channel for what I can understand. But in particular, there were 2 videos on there that were very interesting, made me think an awful lot about, what I was doing with the channel and all the kind of back end stuff, that talks about the way YouTube is changing and how it's changed in the last 6 months and how it might change in the future. I don't know if you've heard, there's a lot of the big like PewDiePie and the Stumpy guy that does these huge channels that have been talking about having dips in their views and all the rest of it. And it kind of explains why that's happening, and it's not necessarily the reason that these big YouTubers have been saying it has. And it's kind of, it was interesting. So I've been looking at those. So definitely, even though I'm not into gaming, and if you're not into gaming either, it's probably worth having a look for these 2 videos over on the Game Theorists about that. But in the workshop, what have I been working on? I've done a couple of videos. I've just launched my shop tour of my turning room. It's like the world's smallest workshop. Some people might be able to sympathise with that, when, especially you North Americans in your 2-car garages, saying how small your workshops are. Chris?
Sorry. Guilty.
I think we're working on about 5 feet by 5 feet where I've got my lathe. So pretty small shop. People have been interested in that. And I've got a couple more coming out. I think I'm making a Bradle / ice pick. What was the other one? I forget now. There's another one that might come out in the next. Might be out by the time this podcast's out. But that's what I've been doing. And I'm working on a project for 3M as well at the moment. But I'll tell you about that down the line, because at the moment it's not very interesting. So.
This has been fun. I've actually got some inspiration from this little episode today. I actually have.
I genuinely hope that people out there listening have as well, because as we've been talking, I've had a couple of ideas I've jotted down, and we've thrown some around Jamie's pen and Joe's stuff with his resins and Alan's gantry. So hopefully people can pick these things up, and don't be afraid to have a big long list of ideas. Just accept that you're only going to do some of them. So where can you guys all be found on the internet then?
Easy enough. Chris Cute on YouTube. Make the First Cut on Facebook.
You can find me on YouTube at JP Woodwork, and Instagram and Twitter on JP_Woodwork.
The Woodworking Junkie, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Average Joe's Joinery on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Average Joe's Photography on Instagram.
Fantastic. So make sure everyone listening, go and check the guys out and see what they're doing. And also don't forget, we're actually on Twitter as well. And not only are we on Twitter, but we can access the Twitter account. So if you do tweet us, we can now reply, can't we, Jamie?
Yes, we can.
Good stuff. Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining us this week. I've had a lot of fun. I think the other guys have as well. I've been Rick Morley. You can find me at brainfizz.uk and under my name on YouTube. So let's get stuck into all these projects now. We've got a bit of inspiration, and we'll see you same time next week. Toodaloo.
Awesome. You guys, talk to you later.
See you next week.
Take it easy.
Have a week. Time for you to leave, Eli.